When we're kids, we have a tendency to take the things adults in our lives tell us for granted, whether that's something as trivial as the tooth fairy or something much larger, such as facts about the world around us, including some oversimplifications of the truth, or even just tales told to kids that were never corrected in older age. We're going to be talking about that today. You're watching Top Trending, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 lies your teacher told you as a kid. Let's kick this list off with an extremely common phrase to hear in English language classes all over. The phrase I before E except after C. The phrase whose long form is I before E except after C, or when sounded as A as in neighbor and way, dates back to a footnote in the Manual of English Spelling by school inspector James Stewart Laurie. Though this is likely the earliest the rhyme has appeared written down, it's thought to have been established before this date. Exactly how long is unknown. The reason the phrase is on the list is because it's just not true. With 923 words in the English language breaking the rule, there are more exceptions to the rule than there are words which follow the rule, weirdly enough, though the rule is completely true for a lot of simpler words: friend, believe, and receive, making it useful for teaching young children spelling. The fact that there are so many exceptions to the rule means we should maybe think about abandoning that whole thing. At number 9, we have the myth that Viking helmets used to have horns at some point in history. This is quite a common myth, not helped by the amount of media aimed at kids that displays this inaccuracy, but it's a complete lie. Only one helmet that can confidently be classed as Viking has been discovered, turning up on a Norwegian farm in 1943. Though the helmet possesses a fairly standard design for what you might expect from a Viking helmet, you should note its lack of horns. So where did this myth come from? According to historian Elizabeth Nix, it originated in the early 19th century, where Swedish artists such as Gustav Malmström began to portray Viking raiders as equipped with the classic headgear design. Later in the 1870s, costume designer Karl Doppler would go on to create costumes for the Der Ring des Nibelungen opera cycle set in Germany, solidifying the falsehood that would prove to be so powerful it's still an unmistakable design today. You don't have to look much further than the Minnesota Vikings football team to see evidence of the impact this myth has had on modern culture. Number 8. We've all heard the story. A young Isaac Newton in the 17th century was sitting under an apple tree when an apple suddenly fell from the tree and hit him on the head. A eureka moment that would cause Newton to develop the theory of gravity. In reality, though, this wasn't exactly what happened. Newton moved back to his family manor in 1665 after Cambridge University temporarily closed down because of an outbreak of bubonic plague. Sometime over the course of the 2 years he was living there, he witnessed an apple fall from a tree in his family's orchard, which was the catalyst for the development of the law of universal gravitation. So while the apple causing Newton to develop his theory wasn't a myth, it falling on his head certainly was. Still, it's a nice thought, and is certainly a way of helping kids remember the event, if not entirely truthful. Next up, we have the myth that Napoleon was short. This is a really common myth, with a syndrome named a Napoleon complex being named after the belief that Napoleon Bonaparte, 19th century emperor of France, measured just 5 foot 2 inches. This, although quite a funny tale, just isn't true. Napoleon actually measured 5 foot 7 inches, average height for people at the time. The confusion lies in dodgy conversion between the French and British measurement systems, where both use the same terms for different measurements. In addition to the measurement taken at his post-mortem, this myth could also stem from Napoleon liking to surround himself with tall soldiers, making him look short-statured in comparison. Believe it or not, though, scientific research has been done to disprove the Napoleon complex. In 2007, the University of Central Lancashire used an experiment called the chopstick game to test the temper of men of various heights, with the subject being briefed beforehand to deliberately provoke their partner in the game. The research ended up showing that taller men are more likely to become aggravated and hit back in comparison to their shorter counterparts, believe it or not. So for 2 reasons, it's probably about time we scrap the old Napoleon complex phrase. At number 6, we have all of cursive writing. I'm not sure if you've ever had handwriting class in elementary school as a kid, but this was something I remember our class would do. We'd have our teacher walking around the room while we copied out short paragraphs in cursive slanted, and they'd assess the quality of our joined-up handwriting. The reason that was given to us was it was important to improve the speed and tidiness of our writing, which turned out to be not true for the majority of people. By the time you're leaving high school, cursive is a distant memory for the majority of students, who either write in their own distinct style that they've found or just type everything because it's 2018. Really, whatever works best for you is your best way of writing, making students write in a certain font that the majority of them will abandon later on, and while I'm sure a handful of people in my class as a kid still write in cursive nowadays, it certainly can't be called important. Number 5 is another popular story told by teachers that is now considered largely to be false. The story behind legendary painter Vincent Van Gogh's left ear, or the lack thereof. Though the traditional story sees Van Gogh cutting off his own ear due to psychological issues, some retellings even embellishing and describing Van Gogh mailing it to his girlfriend. A team of German historians recently has begged to differ. Recent sources uncovered by historians, including police records, letters by Van Gogh, and biographical material, point to Paul Gauguin, a friend and contemporary of Van Gogh. Allegedly, in December 1888, Gauguin attacked Van Gogh with a rapier after Van Gogh threw a wine glass at him. Though other academics disagree with the modern reconstruction of events, Hamburg-based academic Hans Kaufmann claims that the official version contains many inconsistencies, and the story is potentially a lot different. A popular reason put forward for Van Gogh not letting on about the true cause of his missing ear is his close friendship to Gauguin, who surely would have been arrested, and his own dream of building a colony of painters in South France. Gauguin being brought to prison surely would have spelled the end for that dream. Next up, we have number 4. This might come as a surprise to quite a few of you given how widespread this myth is, but diamonds aren't actually made from the compression of coal. In fact, diamonds date back to before the first terrestrial plants even existed. Seeing as coal is essentially the compressed remains of ancient plants, it's not too difficult to see why this doesn't add up all too well. Coal is basically never found in the same environment as diamonds, with the latter forming in the mantle layer of the Earth due to carbon atoms and intense heat being forced into crystalline structures and being carried up to the crust during volcanic eruptions. At number 3, we have Martin Luther's 95 Theses. Martin Luther was a professor of moral theology at the University of Wittenberg, and his 95 Theses, or the Disputation on the Power of Indulgences, were a list of propositions that would bring about the Reformation, widely believed to have finished with the end of the 30 Years' War in 1648. As the story goes, Martin Luther nailed the list of 95 Theses to a church door, but as you can probably guess, this isn't strictly historically accurate. Luther ended up sending the Theses to Albert of Brandenburg, the Archbishop of Mainz. While it is rumored that he posted them on the door to the All Saints Church in Wittenberg, there's no strict evidence of this, and it certainly wasn't the only act that ended up bringing about the Reformation period. In our number 2 spot, we've all heard the myth that the Great Wall of China is the only man-made structure that can be seen from outer space. And the word myth is pretty important in the last sentence, even though it's pretty normal to believe. NASA has confirmed that the Great Wall of China generally isn't the only man-made object visible from space, at least to the unaided eye in low Earth orbit. That isn't to say that no structures we've built are visible from space, however. The pyramids of Giza, for instance, are visible from the outside of the planet's atmosphere, but no particular feature about the Earth is visible to the human eye from the surface of the Moon. This myth was allegedly started as early as the 30s, decades before the Apollo 11 mission, so this is something to be taken with a grain of salt, even though it is a lovely thought. And finally, we get to our number 1 lie your teacher told you. Here's a question. Who invented the first telephone? Most people would probably at this point jump in with the answer of Alexander Graham Bell, but the real answer might surprise you. Antonio Meucci was an Italian inventor that moved to New York, developing the very first voice communication link from his home that connected his second-floor bedroom to his lab. He submitted the link to the US Patent Office in 1871, but failed to mention the electromagnetic transmission of vocal sound. Guess who did? 5 years later, Alexander Graham Bell's patent was approved, and has been widely credited with patenting the first practical telephone, though this has mainly just been referred to as Bell having invented the telephone. Meucci intended to develop his own telephone prototype, but unfortunately didn't have the financial stability in order to finance the invention. He ended up dying in 1889. The Italian government later honored Meucci with the title Official Inventor of the Telephone, and he was later credited by the US House of Representatives as playing some role in the development of the first phone, due to there being some debate over the real inventor of the telephone. And that's our list. Did you agree? Disagree? Have any experiences with anything we mentioned? Or have more suggestions for things we missed over the course of the video? Let us know in the comments section. We love hearing from you. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to like the video, share with friends, and subscribe to Top Trending for more regular countdown videos such as this one.